The Power of the Rosary by Isabella Hepburn. What is it that you believe in? Whatever religion you follow, or don't, most people believe that there is a higher power. Most believe in something greater, something as humans are not able to control, to see, to touch. I personally am a Catholic, and with pride I can say that I wholeheartedly believe in the power of praying the Rosary. I have no doubt that God hears us if we pray with faith. In fact, I am certain because of my past experiences with hardship. I was raised in a Catholic environment. Therefore, I've always been influenced by the presence of Catholicism in my family. There was a time in my life where I decided to be independent and make my own decisions. I swore that God did not exist, and I classified myself as an atheist. The day I made this decision, I saw my life passing right before my eyes. Everything began to turn downhill. I felt I had nowhere to turn. I began to lose my friends. As John Green writes, slowly and then all at once. I felt desolate, lonely, and scared. I did not feel like I was enough to be heard by God, and I even got to the point where I thought that my life had no purpose. My parents started worrying, as well as everyone else in my family. I saw how they prayed for me, and I argued stubbornly that it was not necessary, and that they were wasting their time praying to something that didn't exist. One day, my mother had the idea that we should start praying the Rosary as a family. I was angry. I felt betrayed because my parents were not supporting my decision. I knew I had to pray with them anyway, so there I sat in the cold, dark living room, praying to something or someone who I perceived was not listening to me. I pondered to myself, how can I feel like this? I felt alone and sad, as if I were not enough, as I watched my mom praying across the room in tears. Praying the Rosary every day became a habit for my family and I. The first couple of weeks, it was hard for me to get used to the idea of offering a daily prayer. But after some time, I started to actually feel the need to pray. Time flew by, and I thought I was feeling better about myself. But I still had a feeling of disgust when I woke up every morning and looked at myself standing before the mirror. I remember when the day came when my mom decided that it was finally the right time for me to attend a holy hour at church. When she gave me the news, I remember feeling some kind of heat inside my body. Surely I was not attending, so I began to argue with her. She kept calm and tried to explain to me that we were just going to church to pray in the presence of the Holy Sacrament. When she said that, it only made my anger worse. What is the Holy Sacrament and what will it do for me? I told her in a blaring voice. She tried to make me reason and convince me to go with her. But her trying to convince me infuriated me. All the progress I thought was achieved by praying the Rosary was lost. I had a feeling of abomination and rancor flowing through my veins, something I hadn't felt in days. After a door slamming and us crying, my mom finally convinced me to go. I thought, I'm not making this easy for her. If she's taking me up there against my will, there must be something I can do to annoy her. As we sat in the car, my anger fumed, and all I could think about was that I didn't want to go. I remember this Thursday evening as if it had happened yesterday. I was still wearing my school uniform, that gridded dark blue pleated skirt paired with a light blue button-up and black shoes. My mom shouted from downstairs, Isabella, we're leaving. I ran downstairs pretending I actually wanted to go, and I could see how my mother's eyes radiated with happiness. After watching her, I felt accomplished, because I knew my plan was going how I expected. On our way there, my mother began to talk to me about how important it is to have Jesus in our hearts and that we need to give him our time. She told me she was proud of me, and that I was making her happy because I decided to go to the holy hour. I had forgotten what my plan was, and instead I was excited to live this new experience. Once we arrived at the church, the feeling was back. Abomination, rancor, and hatred. I felt like running and I felt the need to scream. I felt uneasy, terrified, and anxious, but in ways like never before. Of course, my mother had to sit on the first bench, right in front of the altar where the enormous crucifix was. Whenever I stared at it, I could feel a piercing gaze right into my eyes. I decided I was stronger than all of the feelings that were beginning to take control of my body. I felt the need to prove my autonomy, so I pulled up my skirt and made it look as short as possible and started to text. I was sitting with bad posture, and I could see by a look in my mother's eyes that she was angry. It felt like an eternity being there, so I tried to block all of the singing and the praise, because I felt like I was going insane. After half an hour into the holy hour, my phone battery died. I thought, what am I going to do now to make my mom angry? I had an idea. I took off the sweater I was wearing and made it into a bundle to use as a pillow on the pew so I could fall asleep. My mom woke me up right when the holy hour was done and took me back to the car. She says today that I didn't say a word on the ride back home. I just stared through the window and cried. She remembers that she can sense something inside of me had changed. After the ride back home, I was touched, and all of the negative aspects of my life were gone. I slowly began to accept the idea of praying, and my life was taking an evident turn. I finally found a purpose to my life. The girl I was before was steadily but surely going away. I began to see the world with hope and positivity. My life was renewed, changed. This was the day that I decided it was time to talk to a priest. I had to talk to someone about everything I was feeling and thinking, and I knew that the right person to do it with was with the father of my church. I had an appointment with him once every 3 days, and he helped me erase every type of enmity. My life took a 180-degree turn, and I was excited to start with a new beginning. A couple of months later, I began to have severe back pain. I went to the doctor's office, and he told me everything was fine, but my mother and I had a feeling that there was something else behind it. The pain was unbearable. On a Sunday afternoon, I began to feel a sharp pain in my back. I told my parents, and they told me to take my medicine. I told them I had already done that, but the pain wasn't going away. They had their minds occupied by something else, so they were not paying much attention to me. Hours passed, and the pain was still present, getting worse. It had me crying, and there was nothing to make it stop. It's not possible that I'm having this kind of pain, but there's nothing behind it. There must be something wrong, I thought. The clock ticked while my back ached. I tried to get some rest, but I felt as if my body was breaking into a billion pieces. My legs began to go numb, and there was no power in earth that could make me move. My parents quickly called 911, and a couple of minutes later, I was in the ambulance rushing through the streets. After I passed out in the ambulance, my memories are vague. I was under a lot of painkillers which had me a little dazed in the senses, so there are several things I can't recall. I had many medical examinations done while I was hospitalized, but there was nothing to be found. The doctors were perplexed because they could not find an explanation to what was happening. My parents began to feel desperate because they were looking at their youngest daughter in so much pain, but there was nothing they could do about it. They tried some or several painkillers, but there was no human power that could make the feeling stop. More unconscious than not, before having the MRI done, I asked my parents to pray the rosary while they were in the waiting room with me. The doctors took me away, and since I'm claustrophobic, I had to get general anesthesia to calm me down. My dad had to leave the room because they were calling him from work, but my mother stayed with the doctor who was performing the examination. Concerned, she asked the young man under the white doctor's coat what was going on. He told her, "I'm afraid that there is something very serious going on with your daughter, and consequently she will need surgery." My mother says that she burst into tears, but she kept praying the rosary. While I was still inside the MRI machine, something went wrong and it turned off right before the doctor was done. Somehow, the pictures were saved, but they had to do the exam all over again for legal purposes to prove that the results were not altered intentionally. The tests were redone, but this time the results were completely different. My primary physician got both results and was perturbed how the outcomes were so distinct. As to what I've heard, in the first one I had a tumor in my spine right in the coccyx area. The consequence was that I'd had to get surgery done immediately because it was affecting the original anatomy of my spine. But the chances were that I wouldn't survive. And if I did survive, The likelihood of being paraplegic was nearly 100%. On the other hand, the second results showed nothing. I just had a swollen coccyx as a result of a bad movement and an extra vertebrae, but it was nothing serious. The doctor was very confused and said that he preferred to wait another day so I could have one last MRI just to see which of the results was the right one. Not knowing what had happened during the MRI, I woke up from the anesthesia to find that all of my family was in the room, including the priest. They had brought balloons in every color, a delicious smelling pizza with cheese falling from the sides, and joyous music to cheer me up. I was confused because I could see the concerned look on their faces, trying to pretend they were happy. Nobody knew what was going to happen to me, and they were afraid to lose me, but I was unaware of what was going on. They told me everything was all right, that they just wanted to visit me. After everybody left, I asked about the results, and my mother explained that there was a technological fail, so I was having the examinations redone on the next day. I knew there was something else behind it, so I convinced my mom to tell me the real story. With tears rolling down her cheeks, she explained to me what the doctor had said. There's a 50-50 chance that you need surgery, and the process is very delicate and dangerous. I kept calm and told her everything was going to be all right. It was my idea to have the priest back in the hospital so he could offer a prayer for me. In the meantime, I asked my mom to help me pray my daily rosary. She blankly accepted. After we were done, I told her to get some sleep, so we did. Waking up the next day was a little bit hard. During the night, I had some intravenous painkillers and other substances in order to make the MRI appear clearer. The medication made me feel nauseous and numb. The time of the scan was slowly coming by, and I began to feel progressively more nervous. As I was about to be anesthetized, I asked my mom to pray and to have faith that everything was going to be all right. I told her to leave the room and wait until the testing was done and the primary physician has the results to ask any questions. She did everything I asked her to. After I woke up from the anesthesia, I was alone in the cold and macabre hospital room. I felt a sensation of solitude and terror. A few minutes later, my mom showed up through the door with a huge smile on her face. To her surprise, I had already woken up. She ran up to me with tears in her eyes, which brought to light a huge relief. There was no need for me to ask if everything was fine, because the look she had was enough to tell. We hugged each other like never before, not letting go of that warm and candid feeling. I asked her to pray the rosary once more before leaving the hospital as a gesture of giving thanks, because in the end, we knew that my miracle was granted because of my vigorous faith on the power of the rosary.